morning, everyone. Welcome to Coffee with the Pastor. I'm Pastor John Woodin, and this is a ministry of Hollywood Faith Christian Center in beautiful Hollywood, Florida, on the Atlantic coast of Florida. Well, we're going to continue talking about the Apostle Paul, which is really a central figure to all of Christianity. Paul is from Tarsus. Most people think that it was in Turkey. In modern Turkey, although some argue that it was in Spain or some other places. But for the most part, most people agree that it was in modern Turkey. Now, first of all, we know several things about Paul. One is he is a Roman citizen. How do we know that? Well, he tells us in several places that he claims his citizenship. And number two is that when he finally was executed, he was beheaded, not crucified. A Roman citizen could not be crucified, so under Roman law, so he had to be beheaded. He was Jewish, for sure, and he was a Pharisee. And he zealously persecuted the church, and that's how he encounters Christ. In Acts chapter 9, he has a marvelous conversion. On the road to Damascus, he's heading for Damascus. It says, breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord. And he encounters Jesus. And it says, and as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly a light shone around him from heaven, and he fell to the ground. Now, whether he was on a horse or a donkey or what, we don't really know. It doesn't say. But he fell to the ground and heard a voice saying, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Well, we know that Apostle Paul's real name was Saul from Tarsus, or Saul of Tarsus. And he said, who are you, Lord? And he said, I'm Jesus whom you're persecuting. It is hard for you to kick against the goads. Now, the goads, of course, are long sticks, sharpened, and preventing oxen from backing up in the yoke. So instead of backing forward, they can't because there's a sharp stick there, and it pushes them forward. And the same thing is going on with Paul. In 2 Corinthians chapter 11, Paul gives his testimony, and he talks about how many times he was beaten, how many times he was in prison, in perils of the deep, day and night I've been in the deep. The journeys often in perils of waters and robbers, perils of my own countrymen, and perils of the Gentiles, and perils in the city. It just goes through this anytime you want to read it. It's great reading, of all the things that he went through for the gospel, and he never backed off, never backed down. In 2 Corinthians 12, we know that he says, I know a man in Christ who 14 years ago, whether in the body I do not know, or whether out of the body I do not know, God knows, it was caught up to the third heaven. And he said, and I know such a man, whether in the body or out of the body, I do not know. God knows how he was caught up to paradise and heard inexpressible words, which is not lawful for a man to utter. In other words, he was taken to heaven, and he saw and heard things that he could not tell anyone about. And we know that Paul's talking about himself, because later on he talks about the marvelous nature of these revelations. And then he also says at one point, he said, I can't decide which is better, to be with you, which is beneficial for you, or to be at once in the presence of the Lord, because it was so magnificent. And then we know that he has a thorn in the flesh. Well, many people think it was his eyesight. Other people suspect other things. But for the most part, he talks about his eyes quite a bit because of his experience on the Damascus Road where this bright light shone on him. Lest I should be exalted above measure by the abundance of the revelations, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I be exalted above measure. Concerning this thing, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. And the Lord's comment to him was, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly, I'd rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, and needs, and persecutions, and distress, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I'm strong. There are several times when Paul writes in the letters where he writes, see, I write large with my own hand. And most people think that he had great trouble with his eyes. And in the book of Galatians, he says to the Galatian church, you would have given me your own eyes if you could have, to help me. In 1 Corinthians 2, and he says, I, brethren, when I came to you, did not come with excellence of speech or of wisdom, declaring to you the testimony of God. For I determined not to know anything among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. I was with you in weakness and fear and much trembling, and my speech and my preaching were not with persuasive words of human wisdom. He wasn't a motivational speaker, but in demonstration of the Spirit and of power, that your faith should not be in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God. Now, not in the wisdom of men. So, in fact, most first century contemporary observers, the people that knew Paul, said he was actually on the boring side. He was not a great speaker at all, but the power of God was demonstrated through his life. God bless you, and we'll see you again next time.